the task force work will focus on support and implementation, specifically supporting districts that want to explore ways to partner more effectively with nearby districts. Doing that work will require finding answers to many questions. We hope that together, the task force and interested districts can work to find practical answers in the months and years to come. We will need your guidance. In our time together this afternoon, several members of the task force are going to join me in sharing some highlights of our work and the thinking that has gone into our recommendations to move to a single Berkshire County school district by 2027. We'll touch on these topics: who the task force is, what we did in phase 1 to understand the education challenges Berkshire County faces, what solutions we considered and assessed in phase 2, what conclusions we reached and why, and what we're doing now. Our hope is that we'll all end up with a shared understanding of our recommendation and what led us to make it, and that we will begin to learn from you the questions you have so that we can know better how to support quality education in Berkshire County going forward. The Berkshire County Education Task Force is a volunteer group of current and former school administrators and school committee members, town officials and administrators, teacher association leaders, and local business, higher education, and community leaders who have met 35 times since July 2015 to explore ways Berkshire County can address the challenge of eroding educational quality due to declining student enrollment and revenues that are not keeping pace with costs. We believe that a high-quality education is the right of every child in Berkshire County. We've been exploring and seeking options that will provide the best opportunities and outcomes from and for our schools and school districts at a time of declining population and resources. Here are school committee members from across the Berkshires who have served on the task force. These are 12 of the nearly 30 members. 7 current and former superintendents have helped make sure that our work was both comprehensive and practical. Town and city administrators and finance directors helped us stay grounded in the realities of municipal finance and services. And leaders from higher education helped us connect our aspirations for students to their lives beyond high school. Leaders from businesses and countywide organizations helped us keep us attentive to the realities of the larger economic and demographic forces that work in Berkshire County. And leaders from the statewide associations of teachers and school committees helped us broaden our perspective.
I'm Bill Cameron, retired superintendent from Central Berkshire Regional School District. I want to highlight key findings from our work with the Donahue Institute during phase 1 of our work. Phase 1 of our work confirmed and clarified the fundamental challenge facing public education in Berkshire County, namely the opportunity for access to a quality education for more and more Berkshire County students is eroding as student enrollment continues to decline, per pupil costs rise, levy limits and tax ceilings are reached, and state and federal aid stagnates. Access to rigorous and enriching courses, activities, and academic and social supports has declined dramatically over the past decade for many students. They are expected to shrink even more dramatically for more students over the next decade, unless dramatic changes occur in our educational system. Here you see 3 downward trends marked by the 3 red arrows: the declining number of students, the declining opportunities they have to access a full complement of courses, activities, and services, and our community's increasing inability to pay the costs for all the school and municipal services they need. I want to note especially the decline in student enrollment, a 22% decline over just 12 years and more to come. Classes entering freshman year in many of our high schools are becoming so small that their chances of experiencing a course of studies that offers anything beyond the core are dwindling. The decline in enrollment is making it harder and harder for our high schools to offer the breadth and depth of offerings our students need. Entering ninth grade classes in 5 of the 12 public high schools in the county are already smaller than 70 students. And with kindergarten enrollment 12% smaller than ninth grade enrollment, the challenge of making anything but the most basic courses and services available is only getting more difficult. Yet here you see the upward pressures we documented in our Phase 1 report, marked by the 4 yellow arrows. Per pupil costs are rising. Expectations for what students should know and be able to do are rising, just as the needs of our students are rising due to a host of demographic and societal trends. So too is competition for college admission and entry into promising career paths. I want to make note of the contrast between declining enrollment and rising costs. The work involved in Phase 1 research was completed in fall 2016. Then task force members visited nearly every city and town in Berkshire County to report our findings and gather information and insight to inform our work in Phase 2. The Phase 2 report set the stage for our Phase 2 work. We reached out to the community through a variety of forums last winter and spring in order to develop the goals any potential solution would have to meet. We then identified options for meeting them. We developed and modeled criteria to use in assessing how well each option might meet each of the goals. Then we assessed each option against each criterion. In July, we decided what recommendation to make, and we are beginning outreach now.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Wadsworth, Chair of the Lee School Committee. I would like to share some highlights of our Phase 2 work. Based on feedback we received from our countywide outreach, we confirmed these 3 broad goals or criteria to assess potential solutions to the county's educational challenges. The first 2 focused, of course, on educational quality. The first focused on equitable access to high-quality career pathways, enrichment, and elective courses, and co-curricular activities. While the second focused on safety nets to support their academic and life success in areas such as reading services, social-emotional learning, and special education services. The third focused on financial sustainability. Then, building from those goals, we identified 5 potential options for addressing this fundamental challenge. Scenario number 1. We wanted to look at what might happen if no changes were made, and the county's 17 separate school districts continued the current pace for developing shared services to enhance opportunities for the county's 15,000 students, soon to be 14,000 students. Scenario number 2. In scenario number 2, we envisioned a more robust supervisory union model for the 3 regions of the county, a north, central, and south. A supervisory union is formed when school committees from 2 or more districts agree to share a superintendent and other services. The districts keep their own school committee and create a committee for the supervisory union as a whole. It is a complicated arrangement currently in place in the Northeast at North Berkshire Supervisory Union, in the Northwest at Tri-District, and on the western border for Shaker Mountain. Lee and Tyringham have a similar arrangement. The task force envisioned the possibility of seeking special legislation to permit some experiments with a stronger, more efficient, and effective modified supervisory union arrangement. Scenario number 3 calls for bringing the North, Central, and South supervisory unions of scenario number 2 into a single modified countywide supervisory union. Scenario number 4 envisioned a full-fledged district with a single school committee for each of the 3 regions of the county, again, North, Central, and South. And scenario number 5 called for a single countywide district instead of the 3 regional ones. With the help of the district management group, we modeled the likely impacts of each option, applying 34 criteria, 20 of which encompassed elements and conditions of high-quality education. For example, we looked at the first of our 2 big educational goals, improving access to career pathways, enrichment, and elective course, and co-curricular activities. We identified 11 dimensions to that goal. Here you see one of the 11, dimension 1J. More student and teacher access to effective technology tools and distant learning through a shared technology platform and support. We reviewed a qualitative assessment of how likely it was that each of these 5 scenarios would result in that outcome. Here you can see in scenario number 1, making no change will result in just a little likelihood that there will be more student and staff access to technology. So it was rated red. Scenario number 2, the regional modified supervisory union solution offers more chance, so it was rated yellow. But note that the countywide scenario, number 3, is likely to provide at least a moderate likelihood of putting more technology tools and distance learning opportunities in the hands of the staff and students. So while it earned a yellow, the same as scenario number 2, it was seen as a better on that dimension than number 2, therefore the moderate designation. The full-fledged district scenarios, number 4 and number 5, were both seen as more likely than the other scenarios to meet the technology dimension, so they both earned a green rating, even though the 3-region scenario has less potential than the single region scenario on this dimension. Here's another example, this time involving the second broad educational goal revolving around student safety net. We looked at the likelihood of sharing specialized staff among schools. We saw the same pattern of red, yellow, and green. We examined financial impacts as well. We used the red, yellow, and green scale here too. We had the district management group estimate ranges of how much money could be freed up through the economies of scale and new efficiencies to be reinvested to meet the other educational or municipal needs. Their detailed analysis of current district staffing and spending led them to conclude that the opportunities for reinvestment due to economies of scale in the central office and transportation ranged from a low of $6 million to a high of $8 million. Managing cohort and class sizes to roughly match the state average of 19.1 could yield between a $12 and $15 million for reinvestment. And managing future declining enrollment by reducing those positions most closely correlated with the enrollment decline, largely through attrition, could result in reinvestment opportunities of the 9 to 12 million. The full Phase 2 report is available on the task force website.
I'm Ellen Kennedy, president of Berkshire Community College, and I'm going to spend a few minutes today describing the conclusion we reached and some of the benefits we see for students and the county. When we finished rating each scenario against the educational and financial goals, we did something else. We assessed how easy or hard it would likely be to implement and actually operate each scenario. Then we assessed the likely impact of each scenario, the vertical axis, against our conclusion about how hard it would be to actually implement and operate that scenario. We wanted to make sure we wouldn't be recommending something in the lower left quadrant, hard to do and low impact on education quality. And if something was going to be hard, we wanted to be sure it would have a big impact. Here's how the scenarios stacked up against each other. As you can see, option 1, doing nothing, is the easiest to do, but it has virtually no impact on the educational and financial challenges we set out to solve. Option 5, the single county-wide district, has the most impact, achieves the most for our students, but it is the hardest to do. Drawing on all we had learned through phases 1 and 2, the task force in July concluded overwhelmingly that a single Berkshire County school district offers the best opportunity to provide the best education for the most students at a sustainable cost. A single countywide district can enable Berkshire County to achieve the goals for education we set out to achieve, expanding course offerings, strengthening vocational options, maintaining broad offering of the arts and other electives and co-curricular activities, and providing more services such as counseling, academic support, and enrichment. We see moving to a countywide district over 10 years not as a governance solution, but as an educational solution to the challenge of having an educational system in Berkshire County that is competitive with the best in the Commonwealth and the world. Without it, our continued, sharply declining enrollment and escalating costs will mean that an increasing number of our districts will not be able to provide what we want and need for our children. Here are but a few of examples of the opportunities a single Berkshire County district could provide. We imagine every junior and senior in Berkshire County having access to a distance learning economics course for which they receive both high school and college credit. That means during second period across all high schools, and it is taught by an MCLA or BCC professor. Every student on the autism spectrum in the county and their teacher having access to an autism specialist. The autism specialist visits the school at least once each week to provide expert consultation. As a result, students can be served in their homeroom and school at lower cost and with greater success. Every middle and high school student has access to new extracurricular offerings. Offerings are co-led by an industry specialist in rocketry, robotics, and video game programming. The students partner in person and virtually across regions and compete across Berkshire County. Two small K-6 elementary schools with average class sizes across all grades, ranging from 8 to 14 students, become a pre-K to second grade and a 3rd to 6th grade school, respectively, each with average class sizes of 14 to 19 students. Families gain access to preschool, and there is funding left over to add other services at these schools or elsewhere in the district where it may be needed more. And our last example, students in 3 small elementary schools, some previously without daily enrichment classes, share a single art, music, physical education, foreign language, and drama teacher, so that students have an enrichment class every day taught by a specialist in that content area, and teachers get planning time.
I'm Doug McNally, former principal of Taconic High School and currently an active member of the Berkshire Compact for Education. I want to describe the role the task force is taking on now with outreach and support for districts interested in learning more. A single district is our aspiration. We know that it will require multiple initial and intermediate steps by interested districts in different parts of the county to achieve. This process will likely begin by a few interested districts coming together to form regional districts or modified supervisory unions. Over time, these groups of districts will include more districts that wish to join them. Here, for example, once again, are the towns that have already joined together in supervisory union. The Williamstown, Lanesboro, and Mount Greylock districts may decide to make the leap from a supervisory union to a full-fledged regional district. They're talking about it now. And nearby New Ashford may join them. Maybe Hancock would decide to join that region too. Here are towns that have already joined K-6 or K-12 regions. When we add districts already joined in supervisory unions, you can see that all but 4 communities in the county already have some kind of formal relationship with at least one of its neighbors. We envision these relationships deepening and expanding. For example, perhaps Pittsfield and its neighbors to the east might experiment with a modified supervisory union or discuss expanding access to vocational education. Over time, existing and new combinations of districts could grow and include more districts as more and more towns and districts see the gains that come from joining together, ultimately into a single county-wide district. There are significant advantages to joining together in a single county-wide district, but of course there are challenges. The task force is not a decision-making body. It is only advisory. Each district will be able to make its own decision about whether and how to participate. Some districts will continue the work they have already begun to partner more effectively with nearby districts. Others will begin such discussions soon, looking to find solutions that work for them. Others will want to wait and learn from the early adopters. Still others may never wish to participate. Similarly, our analysis of each scenario does not assume that schools have to be closed, nor does its modeling assume that students' ability to attend schools beyond their current district borders will have to change. Now the attention of the task force turns to outreach. We're starting with a webinar for district and school leaders. We're briefing regional and state organizations that want and need to know that they can support forward momentum in Berkshire County. We've got nearly a full schedule over the next 6 weeks for individual meetings with districts and municipal officials from over the Berkshires. We're planning regional forums for interested stakeholders, and we'll be planning a cross-district convening of those districts and communities that want to explore steps they can take. We believe that high-quality education is the right of every child in Berkshire County and want to continue to do all we can to support the steps that will take us there.
Thank you, Doug, Ellen, Andrea, and Bill. Thank you for the quick overview of our work and recommendation. Over the months and even years ahead, we hope that the task force can be working together with interested districts to find practical answers to the many questions that remain. We need your guidance. So let's open the floor to questions and suggestions. We are especially interested in knowing what questions do you have about the current challenges facing school districts in Berkshire County or options for addressing them. And if your district is thinking that it might be interested in working on new ways to partner with nearby districts, how might the task force be helpful? So let's start. You can type your questions in the question or chat box, and tech support, I do not see any of that on my screen at the moment, just so we can coordinate. We'll give folks a minute to have your questions come together, and if there's an issue with tech support on my end, then I apologize. If any of the others do see it, then somebody else will have to go forward here. But we'll hold on here a minute.
Hello everyone, this is the moderator. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box. You also have a button you can seek in the software that says you'd like to raise a hand. If you'd like to raise your hand, I can unmute you. You can ask your question out loud. John will be facilitating which questions we read and which questions we answer live.
I apologize. I'm going to have to ask somebody else to take over my spot until I can see something here, because it is not here.
John, currently none of the questions have been typed in.
Okay. We'll wait.
One of the questions we've seen before is, how are we going to communicate this to the rest of the community?
Okay, so I can start if you'd like. We're in the midst of doing a number of outreach efforts to the community. We're going to be going out to the individual school districts and municipalities. We're hoping to do joint meetings with those folks. We're also doing some community outreach to the greater at-large community. The Northern Berkshire Community Coalition will be hosting a presentation of ours in October. And we have several that will be happening over the course of the next month or two in all sectors of Berkshire County.
John, another question that's been asked is, how are you going to deal with school debt?
Okay, I'll refer to some of my school experts here, either Doug or Bill perhaps could be better to answer that question.
What was the last word in the question?
The question was, how are you going to deal with school debt? School debt,
okay. There are a number of, if I could answer that or try to begin the answer anyway, John. There are a number of very, very significant and complicated issues that have to be addressed as part of moving toward a county-wide district. And clearly the issue of debt is one of them. The debts are incurred by the municipalities or by the regional school districts and apportioned among the component the component towns in the districts. And we don't have a model that we're proposing at this point, nor do I think we will be developing one model that we'll be proposing at this point for the question of school debt or the question of financing the district on an annual basis, or for the question of what kind of school committee it will have and what the role of the various existing towns in that school committee would be. These are practical questions that would have to be resolved by discussions and negotiations by districts that want to participate in this and that see the educational benefits and realize that there have to be a number of practical questions solved. School debt is a problem to be solved. It's not an insoluble problem. It would require people understanding all of the variants and coming to an agreement on how it would be apportioned or dealt with, and whether the Commonwealth would have to get involved to help facilitate this kind of consolidation. So I don't mean the answer to be evasive. This is something that we can't direct the towns or the school districts or the school committees to do. This is something that they have to work out. If they see the educational benefits as primary, they'll be able to do that.
This is Doug. Also, we should note that Massachusetts is not alone in facing this situation of declining enrollment. And in most of the other states that have addressed this, there have been modifications of, on a legislative area and on state financing that have facilitated the merging of districts, looking at both school debt and post-retirement benefits such as health benefits for retired teachers. And we know that the governor and the legislature are very interested in, and have been following closely what has been happening in Berkshire County, because we're not the only county in Berkshire, in Massachusetts facing this. Franklin County, Northern Worcester County, and the Cape are also facing issues like this.
Thank you. I'm going to go with another written question before we open it up to some of the live ones. One of the questions typed in was, what is the impact on collective bargaining agreements if schools start to join together? Has there been a cost analysis on this? Also, how would this impact teachers moving between schools?
Well, again, let me try, and then others can jump in. The merger of school districts is not unheard of in Massachusetts. There are, from time to time, districts that had been independent that merge into regional districts. That's happened on the Cape within the last couple of years. And there's a procedure, a process that's spelled out in Chapter 150E for dealing with issues having to do with collective bargaining, and that would require the school committee for the district that is being formed to deal with the bargaining units in the existing districts. And it's really impossible to cost out what the final solution to the problem, or the resolution to the problem, I should say, would be. You'd have to know what the salary costs of each of the individual districts are, and you would have to then work with models for merging these collective bargaining agreements, which don't just involve salary costs, of course. They involve working conditions as well, and benefits. So it's not a process that's unheard of. It would be complicated on this scale, but it's complicated even when it involves just two districts merging with each other. So the MTA has been an active participant in the task force, and they're well aware of the complexity of the problems that are associated with merging these bargaining units, and they have voted for this consolidation. That is, their representative was in support of the single district consolidation, believing again that it's a complex problem, but it's not one that can't be solved.
I also think that we should note that this is an iterative process. In the presentation, we talked about intermediate steps, and our goal is to have one district a decade out. We can, as districts negotiate, if they know they're coming together, there can be conversations that would facilitate gradual changes that would lead to uniform contract language.
I would just say for the folks that are listening that if you don't get your answer complete as you're looking for, just let us know. Just follow it up with another question. We'll try to answer your question as best as we can.
That is correct. We're recording all the questions that are typed in, and we'll do our best to follow up if we run out of time before we address them all. Next, I'm going to unmute Dennis. Dennis, you've got a question that you've started to type out. Can you elaborate? Dennis, are you there?
Yes.
The question Dennis had was, did the financial analysis have a breakdown that shows what is saved by area? That is, teaching costs, transportation, administration, etc.?
we don't have answers to some of these questions. I think it's important to understand that we're doing what is described by some as backward mapping. We have established a goal of what our long-term goal is with a countywide school district, and then we're working on the implementation of it along the way as these intermediate steps take place. So it's much of how that all happens is dependent on the individual school districts that decide to be early adopters, and also the ones that follow suit or perhaps follow suit after seeing how that works out with the early adopters. So there's a lot of, and we're not trying to not fully answer the question. We just do not have all the answers to the questions regarding details such as that. Those will come over time. It's a long, challenging process, and but it will be implemented through the help of the school districts that actually participate and get established together.
John, if I could just add to that the phase 2 report does have a tabulation or a grid describing areas of expenditure and what possible financial savings might be realized from consolidation into a county-wide district. Now, the savings, what's done with the savings, of course, from an educational perspective, you would want anything that's saved to be reinvested to expand programming and services to students. But there is information in the report. I don't know how much detail you would be looking for, but there is information in the report that at least begins to address the question that you asked, I think.
Let's move on to one of the other written questions. Somebody typed in and asked, can my students stay on their school team?
This is Ellen Kennedy. I'll just jump in and say it's my understanding that people don't think about the district and they think about the school they're associated with, and that would mostly continue across the county. So most our high schools would be there for while this process went on, and people would continue to be on the teams that they're on. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's correct.
This is Doug. I was high school principal during the period when this downturn in enrollment started significantly impacting our ability at the schools to offer teams. Many in the public, for their child in schools, that we have what are called co-op teams all over the county, where 2-3 high schools get together to form a hockey team, for instance, because there's not enough players in any one of them to do it. So our athletes are very much used to sharing the athletic field with peers from another school already. I think there's a misimpression that when we go to one school district, that would severely reduce the number of high schools. As I said in my part of the presentation, we're not assuming the closing of schools. It may be necessary down the road, and districts would be making that decision on their own. But there are, as far as athletics, I think that the management of a single district would enhance the opportunities of students to have athletic experiences and other co-curricular activities that are being lost by districts because of lack of numbers sufficient to support them, whether it's Shakespeare and Company or football.
Thank you. Moving on, another question asked was, how quickly do you expect the county can move into a single district?
We're talking about a up to 10-year time period. It'll be, again, totally revolving around the participation of individual school districts. We think the key to the realization of the aspiration of a countywide school district is early adopters. school districts, neighboring school districts, becoming more directly involved with each other in some capacity. Perhaps the modified supervisory school union approach. And we do have some interest from some school districts to do that. So we anticipate early adopters. And then after that point, there will be others, hopefully, that will join in once they see what hopes to be some successful feedback from those early adopters. And it'll be a gradual process over time that will take a long time. That's why we set a specific time period of up to 10 years. It certainly can be anticipated that it's going to take that kind of time to get there.
Thank you, John. Another question we have is, how will this affect our community's profile, and how will this affect our draw for economic development?
I'll jump in on that one. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that one of one of the things we heard from communities when we went out to the to seek input was that there's a concern about, on the part of the private sector, the work and workforce development, and also about parents of younger children in the county, that the profile of Berkshire County is going to be diminished if we could move forward boldly and enhance the access for all children in the county to a high-quality education. That would raise the profile of the entire county and all schools within it. The idea that we can collaborate and we can share best practices would only enhance the desire of someone to move to Berkshire County as an employee. It would help employers in recruitment of employees from outside the area. It also would enhance the ability of us to educate our youth to fill the jobs that are vacant right now.
I also think we could, this is Ellen Kennedy, that we really take advantage of the Berkshire brand, so to speak, and we have a Berkshire County educational system that is looked upon as a real gem in Massachusetts, in the region, in the country, a place where people want to move with their families because the entire community is all in on education. The business community, our partners, students have apprenticeships and career opportunities while they're in high school to do exploration, maybe even in middle school, and the nonprofits are in. Every single school could end up with an education fund supporting its extracurricular efforts. Like we continue our partnership with Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. I just think we model this incredibly vibrant community that cares so much about education and ensures that every student, no matter what community they live in, has an equally enhanced educational experience, is providing an equally enhanced educational experience.
Moving on to the next question. Somebody's written in, what about vocational needs in South County?
We addressed that in the second phase report, and we talk about different models of providing vocational education in South County. It could be a partnership with McCann, with Taconic High School, with Berkshire Community College, providing some vocational programming in the Southern Berkshires. It could be, not to be heretic about this, but it could be that one of the schools is modified into a vocational school in Southern Berkshire. But all of that would be on the table as we pursue the right options for the entire county.
I think that absent strong action in sharing, there is no solution for South County. I know that the new Taconic is going to have a very good set of vocational opportunities for students in the central Berkshire area. I know that Berkshire and Pittsfield have already talked about the possibility of partnering there. But for South County, it's going to have to be a South County solution, and no single district alone will probably be able to support it. And that's one of the reasons why if you have a county-wide district, you could actually find a way economically to offer high-quality vocational options to students in South County.
That's been one of the highest priorities that we've heard over and over again from folks down in South County, that vocational education is a high priority for many students and school districts. And so we thought a lot about that, and we are looking to further, as we go forward here, as to ways to make that possible. But as Doug said, it's a South County solution. They'll have to find solutions right there amongst themselves.
John, it's Andrea. I know in Lee we are actually partnering with McCann and trying to revitalize our carpentry vocational program. So that's an example how South County can benefit by partnering and collaborating with someone from North County, because they've built the model and then they're sharing their knowledge with us.
One of the problems we faced is the fact that the South County high schools tend to be quite small. And with a cohort of under 100 students in a grade, it's very difficult to offer multiple vocational options at a single site. So that's where some collaboration and offering, as they used to do on the Southern Berkshire Collaborative, where one school would do one program, another school another, and students could choose between the two. If they were all part of one district, that would not be a matter of inter-district choice. It would just be which program you chose to attend within a wide district.
And we've had many conversations with McCann as well. You know, as Andrea mentioned, they are doing some collaboration now with Lee, and they have talked about doing other collaborations with folks down in South County. So there's a lot of shared interest there in exploring those kind of opportunities as well.
We had a follow-up question from Dennis on the financial model. He asks, does the model analysis show any savings in teaching expense, which are generally in excess of 70% of the district's cost?
John, can I take that?
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you for the question. The phase 2 does address that, because it assumes that no teacher loses their job, but the savings is through attrition. So as teachers retire, and also through specialization. So instead of a teacher teaching 5 different Spanish language, like a Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they would do Spanish 1 or Spanish 2, and so that gives the children a more versed and in-depth learning experience without stretching the teacher too thin. And so you have the 19.1 students in the class, which gives more dimension and diversity to the classroom experience also.
You can just look, this is Doug, you can just look at the Adams Cheshire move, where they had to close Cheshire Elementary. When they moved all of the students in a given grade into a single building, that gave them some efficiency of scale that saved them some positions, because you didn't have 2 small classes in 2 different buildings. You could have, or 4 small classes in 2 different buildings, and you could end up with 3 when they're all in one grade, in one building.
Exactly.
Possibly our last question written in is, what happens to school choice?
I think in my part of the presentation, I specifically stated that choice would be there. It wouldn't be called quite the same thing, but most districts with multiple schools within them, within the district, have intra-district choice as well as inter-district choice. In other words, that if there were multiple high schools within the countywide region, students could attend any one of them just as they do in large city districts and county districts in Maryland and in Florida and so on. This is not a unique model. It's just financially has less negative impact on the communities than present school choice models.
Thank you. I believe we've reached our time as far as questions. John, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Dan, and thanks everybody for participating in this. We hope that we have provided some of the answers to your questions as best as we can. And if you have more questions or suggestions, please reach out to the task force through me at jhockridge@gmail.com. And we'll continue this conversation there. We look forward to future engagement. Thanks again.